large swaths of Toronto are currently zoned for single family homes and nothing. Why couldn't we create multiplexes in neighborhoods, whether it be rental or resale? An individual later on in age, they perhaps retired. Why would they want to take on renovations and the headaches of creating a multiplex if there's really no advantage to them? Perhaps we could find a way to make it advantageous. We need to incentivize people to create more of these types of homes rather than punish the people for owning a home. The city of Toronto is currently experiencing a worsening housing crisis. However, could the city of Toronto actually be overhoused? This is episode 8 of the Under the Radar Real Estate Podcast. We're going to be talking about what exactly overhoused is and how it could be a contributing factor to the housing crisis we're in. So let's dive right into things. So what does overhoused mean? So back in 2021, there was a study that was published that kind of flew under the radar. There was a lot of stuff going on back in 2020 and 2021. So it's not surprising that this study was kind of a bit of a throwaway. So there's some articles online that you can bring up and read back on this. But effectively what it is that the city of Toronto had actually performed a study. The study went from 1996 to 2016, and it came up with this term called overhousing. And the study actually found that almost 50% of Toronto dwellings were considered overhoused. So what does overhoused actually mean? So let's break it down. So there's 3 categories of housing. So they'll have overhoused, right-sized housed, and underhoused. Pretty simple concepts to grasp. So right-sized house, look at the number of bedrooms in a dwelling versus the amount of people living in the dwelling. So if you have a single person living in a studio or a 1-bedroom, that's an appropriate size dwelling for that person. And then you kind of go up from there to a couple, to 3 people, to 4 people. So let's say like looking at a family of 4, which is a bit more of a complex structure. In this report, family of 4, a 3-bedroom house would be a right-sized house. Generally you have a couple with, let's say, 2 children. Type of family of 4 would be a right-sized home would be a 3-bedroom house. When we look at underhoused would mean a deficit of bedrooms for the makeup of the people in the dwelling. So again, let's take that family of 4 and let's say they live in a 2-bedroom home. By the definition that the city of Toronto put out, that would be underhoused. There's a deficit of bedrooms. But then when we zoom out to what constitutes an overhoused dwelling would be, let's say, a single person living in a 3-4 plus bedroom home. They have a surplus of bedrooms for the amount of people living in that dwelling. So that's a very simplified explanation as to what overhoused is. When we actually look at the numbers, so let's pull some things up right here. So again, the study was done between 1996 to 2016. So when we look at the different demographics, let's say the 15 to 34-year-old demographics, that's Gen Z and a little bit of millennials, about 24% of that demographic was considered overhoused. So 1 in 4 Gen Z and millennials were overhoused. But then when we zoom in to the households aged 70 or older, we're at 66% of those households that would be considered overhoused. Now, that's not a surprising statistic, especially as people age up, their kids move out, perhaps someone's living with a spouse, and the spouse is no longer there. So you'll get a lot of that generation where you can have a single person living in a large house, or even just a couple living in a large house, 3, 4, 5 plus bedrooms by themselves. So it's not a surprise that a large chunk of the overhoused demographic is aged 70 and older. All right. So has the city been doing anything to kind of address this problem? Now, we're not saying people should be kicked out of their houses to allow families to move in, or the houses getting rolled over to build multiplexes and so on and so forth. But is there anything the city has done so far to address this problem? Well, The city has a lot of tools at their disposal. One tool that they're using right now is the vacant home tax. Now, it doesn't necessarily address this problem specifically, but you'll understand what I'm getting to in a minute, right? So when we look at the vacant home tax, for example, the vacant home tax was instituted to take vacant properties and get them back into the market, whether it be for resale or rental, to open up more housing inventory. Now, when we delved into those numbers and removed all the people who just didn't answer the surveys correctly or didn't answer the survey at all, there was only, after all was said and done, about 17,000 dwellings that were actually deemed vacant in the city of Toronto. And even of that number, we actually don't have a clear picture if any of those dwellings might be short-term rentals or so on and so forth, right? So there's still a little bit of gaps in that data still. 17,000 would still be a large number if all of those units and all of those homes came to market as rentals or they're for sale. But what I'm getting to is that a lot of the things that politicians and municipalities will spew, a lot of these are revenue generating tools. So this is more of a revenue generating tool in my estimation than it is something that actually helps us address the housing crisis. So the city of Toronto is going to make a lot of money off the vacant home tax. A lot of the people who have vacant homes will likely just keep them vacant. They'll pay the tax, they're fine. And that won't necessarily see all that inventory rush back into the market, especially if some of that is also short-term rental. So next thing I decided to explore, I was like, okay, well, when we look at the existing inventory, looking at the MLS and looking at the sheer number of homes that were currently up for sale. So when I took a quick snapshot of homes up for sale right now, so freehold houses, not including condos, the amount of freehold houses, so 3 bedrooms or larger, that was currently on the market. In a quick snapshot, we were hovering around 3,000 some odd homes in specifically the city of Toronto that were up for sale. When I saw that number, I was then asking, is there something we could potentially do to incentivize some of these homeowners that are listing these places for sale to possibly either hold on to those homes and renovate them, turning them into a multiplex, triplex, something like that, where we could incentivize some of those homeowners, instead of placing these homes for sale, perhaps they hold them as rentals, especially when it comes to chopping up the house into a duplex, triplex, multiplex to create more housing quickly. Is there some way we could incentivize these people to hold? Or is there an incentive that we could create to allow investors to potentially, whether it be preferred lending rates, as we all know right now, lending rates are quite high, perhaps through the CMHC or through other government tools, perhaps there's a way to get small-scale home builders or smaller investors to purchase some of these homes that are currently on the market and perhaps turn them into multiplex, duplex, triplex, or so on and so forth, create more rental product quickly. There's a lot of talk out there about the government building houses. For example, the NDP just put out a thing about they want to get back into building homes. Great. The government is giving money to large developers to build high-rise rentals. Great. We need that type of product ASAP. The problem is that product takes a long time to develop and build. So all of the talk right now about building large-scale development, right, mid-rise, high-rise, we are looking at a time horizon of 5 to 10 years for that product to actually hit the market. So what can we do right now? The rising rate environment crisis due to inflation and so on and so forth. There is a lot of people in distress right now. Perhaps there could be a way to snap up some of that existing inventory and turn it into rental housing that we desperately need right now. And it could be done fairly quickly. So that's one idea I had. The other thing that kind of popped into my head, perhaps incentivizing either existing homeowners or investors to turn some of these homes into multiplex, was perhaps we need to look at overall idea of housing in Canada and I guess in North America. So when we go to other places around the world, there aren't a lot of people who own homes, especially when we go to many European countries. There's many lifelong tenants. Home ownership isn't the same as what it is in North America. North Americans, part of our culture is owning a piece of property. That's kind of what we do as North Americans. And I'm not proposing that we overnight change the entire system that we currently have of home ownership. So with that, I was thinking that I wonder if there was a way for multiple levels of government, municipal, provincial, to perhaps create a template or create some type of zoning law that would allow homeowners to easily subdivide existing properties, right? So you take a 3-4 bedroom home, and when you divide it, you could subdivide it into a small condo corporation. Now, there's a couple of small-scale developers that do this already in the city. So the other day, I just was out with a client and I saw a home that was just a regular single-family home on a major street. And the developer took this home, turned it into 4 dwellings and condominiumized it. I don't know if that's a word, but I'll probably use it. Condominiumize the project into 4 homes. So they took the existing structure, chopped it up into 3 condos, and then actually built a laneway dwelling in the laneway near the small 4-unit condo complex. So perhaps there could be a way for the municipality to take some of these large homes and cut them up into smaller condo corporations, right? Where we could have small condo corporations kind of dotted throughout the city, getting more dwellings, more homes to the market, again, quickly. I have a series going on about condo life, and a lot of the vitriol I get line about condo life is people don't love the idea of kids living in these large towers and so on and so forth. Whatever. I mean, I have children, they lived in a tower and grew up to be a well-standing individual. I mean, they're not fully grown up now. I have a teenager and a 10-year-old. But, I mean, when they were small, they lived in a tower. We loved it. No problems there. But, again, not everyone necessarily wants to live in a tower, so perhaps more ground-oriented, small-scale condos could be another solution to the housing crisis we're in. Because, again, a lot of these larger homes that are selling in the city of Toronto, price points are well in excess of $1.5 million. $1.5 million is almost kind of like your entry-level house near the downtown core. So if you were to take one of these homes and chop it up, you can get a lot more homes in that kind of $600,000 to $1 million, $1.1 million zone, where a lot of the middle-class individuals are looking to buy real estate right now. As long as, I mean, from my point of view, with my clientele, that's what they're looking for. That's where a lot of the buyers currently lie. Now, why hasn't this house type been prevalent before? Why couldn't we create these multiplexes in neighborhoods, whether it be rental or resale? So a lot of you that may not necessarily follow real estate that closely have maybe heard of some throwaway terms, one called like the yellow belt. So what is the yellow belt? So I'm going to pull up an article here from Urban Toronto. Urban Toronto is a great resource online. I get paid by Urban Toronto to say this. I just use it all the time as a realtor because it's an amazing resource online for anything new construction, anything kind of public policy when it comes to housing. So anyway, I'm pulling up an article here from Urban Toronto talking about the yellow belt and what is the yellow belt. There's a lot of talk right now about the removal of yellow belt, which would be great for the city of Toronto. So the yellow belt right now is a piece of public policy that basically only allows single-family dwellings to be built in certain areas of the city. So when we hear certain areas of the city, you think it might be contained to just a small portion of the city. However, large swaths of Toronto are currently zoned for single-family homes and nothing. The most you can do in most of these neighborhoods is perhaps take a detached home and split that lot into 2, create 2 small detached houses, or maybe if the lot is large enough, maybe you could get a small row house onto the lot. So maybe 3 homes, possibly 4 if it's a really large lot, but that's the most as it stands right now in many of the neighborhoods. So Toronto right now has introduced legislation to remove a lot of these policies. You'll also see in the news right now, Mississauga is working on this type of policy as well, to go from single family neighborhoods and areas allowing only single family homes to allowing multiplex, whether it be duplex, triplex, up to a fourplex. So again, we look at right now this map that you can see right behind me right here. You can see that majority of Toronto, other than a small little pocket of downtown Toronto, you can only build single family homes. Cities and municipalities are already working on changing these laws, which is great. So now we're going to be allowed more dwellings, hopefully in more types of properties right across the GTA. However, with that, what is going to incentivize current homeowners or investors or so on and so forth actually now build some of these dwellings? So when we look at a principle from commercial real estate called highest and best use, when we look at a lot of homes, especially homes where the person living in the house might be overhoused, might have a single person living in a large home, what would incentivize that overhoused person to take their dwelling and to create more housing? So the highest and best use principle is the idea that that house, the highest and best use isn't necessarily for a single person living in a 3-4 bedroom home. The highest and best use is for that large house to have multiple people living in that dwelling. The problem with highest and best use sometimes is highest and best use from a taxation perspective. That property, once the zoning changes, because highest and best use says that that dwelling should be inhabited by 4+ individuals, that property now should be a fourplex. We're going to tax it as such because that's what it should be. My thing is, what I think the municipalities need to be sure to do and perhaps look at is actually the reverse of that. It's tax incentives for more people to build this kind of housing. So again, I look at like an individual later on in age, they perhaps retired. Why would they want to take on renovations and the headaches of creating a multiplex if there's really no advantage to them? However, perhaps we could find a way to make it advantageous. We're saying, hey, we can chop your tax bill in half or in a quarter by doing this, right? By perhaps saying, hey, we're going to give you a whole bunch of tax incentives, and perhaps create a partnership with the CMHC and the federal government to even give you perhaps very low interest or zero interest loans to create this product. We need to incentivize people to create more of these types of homes rather than punish the people for owning a home. I'm not saying right on this podcast right now saying kick people out of their homes that live in a home by themselves. That's the opposite. I'm saying if you live in a home by yourself and you can afford to live there, cool, keep it, whatever. However, if some people are perhaps saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I would like to have some extra income from rentals, or perhaps I'd like to unlock a whole bunch of the equity in my house without taking a HELOC. So perhaps the government could say, hey, we're going to give you a break on taxes, and we're going to give you a very low interest loan. Chop up that house, take that house, you can live in one dwelling, and then you can sell off 2 other dwellings for $600,000-$700,000, pay off the loan, and have a little bit of additional money laid aside for your retirement or for whatever you need to do in the later stages of life. So that's my 2 cents on kind of where we're at with the overhousing. I think Toronto has an opportunity to unlock a ton of new housing inventory with a few little policy changes, especially looking at the dwellings that are overhoused. So that's it for episode 8 of the Under the Radar Real Estate Podcast. Keep an eye on the channel. We're doing a lot more content like this. You'll see our series on condo life. We have neighborhood tours. We have site tours. We have new developments that we talk about on the channel. So if you like what you saw, please subscribe, hit like, comment away. Again, this is Josh, Under the Radar Real Estate. Peace out.